When we think of World War I, the images that often come to mind are mud-filled trenches, barbed wire, and, well, soldiers huddled under blankets in freezing, wet conditions. Yet, amid the chaos and improvisation, armies discovered simple, ingenious methods to survive the cold. One of the most effective yet overlooked solutions wasn't a special blanket or heated tent. It was a coat. But not just any coat. World War I soldiers used a specific layering and folding technique that trapped body heat so efficiently it often outperformed bulkier bedding in the trenches. Today we'll uncover the coat trick that kept men alive in freezing conditions, explain why it worked, and show how these principles can still be applied in modern survival, camping, or, historical reenactment. Why blankets often failed soldiers in World War I. Blankets, as essential as they were, had significant limitations. Soldiers in the trenches faced wet, muddy conditions where blankets became soaked almost instantly. Once wet, blankets lost their insulating properties and actually drew heat away from the body. Heavy wool blankets could protect against wind, but they were cumbersome, often impossible to dry in trench conditions, and, well, they really limited mobility. The solution that evolved was both practical and portable. Use what the soldier already wore, the coat, in a way that maximized its insulating potential. The brilliance of the coat trick was that it relied on controlled layering and strategic use of air pockets. Air is one of the most efficient insulators when trapped properly. By folding, rolling, or arranging coats around the body, soldiers created layers of trapped air that retained heat far more effectively than a single thick blanket. This method also allowed them to remain mobile if needed, unlike a heavy blanket that had to be removed or adjusted constantly. How the World War I coat trick worked to retain heat. Soldiers would often combine multiple coats or a combination of coat and overcoat, positioning them so that sleeves were tucked in and openings sealed around the neck and wrists. Rolling the coat tightly along the back and around the torso created compression layers that trapped warm air, while the outer coat served as a windbreaker, preventing heat loss to the environment. This wasn't merely wrapping oneself like a burrito. It was a deliberate arrangement that maximized insulation while allowing some movement for comfort and practicality. The coats themselves were made from dense wool, sometimes lined with flannel or additional textiles. Wool naturally repels moisture and, retains heat even when damp, making it far superior to cotton or linen blankets in trench conditions. When folded correctly, soldiers created a microclimate around the body that minimized heat loss through convection and conduction. It's tempting to think that more layers automatically mean more warmth. But, World War I soldiers quickly learned that improper layering could trap moisture against the skin or restrict movement, reducing overall thermal efficiency. The coat trick emphasized layering with intention. The innermost layer retained warmth against the skin. The middle layer captured air and acted as the main insulator, and the outer layer blocked wind and moisture. This principle is still used in modern winter clothing, But honestly, understanding the historical context shows just how practical it was when soldiers had limited resources and extreme conditions to contend with. For practical application today, the lesson is clear. Do not rely solely on one thick blanket or coat. Layer materials thoughtfully, trap air between layers, and use outer garments to block wind, rather than just adding bulk. Even a single wool coat, when folded and arranged correctly, can provide significant insulation in cold weather survival situations. How soldiers adapted the coat trick in trenches and camps. In the trenches, space was limited and conditions were constantly wet. Soldiers would often remove their coats at night, fold and roll them strategically around their bodies, and then cover themselves with minimal extra material. In bivouac settings, they would use a similar principle, sometimes placing a coat on the ground as a dry base, then arranging another coat around themselves for insulation. This flexibility meant the coat trick worked in nearly every environment: muddy trenches, wet fields, or frozen forests. Modern survivalists can, replicate this approach by selecting dense, insulating outer layers and using them both as ground insulation and as a body wrap. For example, in cold weather camping, a rolled wool coat can be used under and around a sleeping bag, dramatically improving warmth without increasing bulk. The key is, honestly, careful positioning to trap air, block wind, and minimize moisture contact. What makes the World War I coat trick so compelling is that it demonstrates survival ingenuity under extreme constraints. Soldiers didn't have access to advanced sleeping systems, synthetic insulation, or heated shelters. Instead, they leveraged what was immediately available, their coats, and turned them into highly effective thermal devices. This teaches a universal principle. Survival is about strategy, not just equipment. Understanding how to manipulate materials, trap air, and protect against wind and moisture remains just as valuable today for winter camping, disaster preparedness, or historical reenactment. The method is also a reminder that durability and multifunctionality matter. Coats weren't just clothing. They became bedding, windbreaks, and insulation devices. This mindset, thinking beyond the obvious function of an item, can be applied to any survival scenario. If you found this dive into World War I ingenuity fascinating, subscribe to the channel and share this video. By preserving and spreading these historical survival techniques, we honor the ingenuity of the past and gain practical knowledge that can still save lives today.